Something inside you has been quietly waiting for you to notice it, to trust it, to finally stop searching everywhere else and turn inward. You've been taught to look outside for answers, for validation, for permission, yet the truth has always been closer than your own breath. There is a power within you that doesn't need approval, doesn't need perfect timing, and doesn't need ideal conditions. It only needs recognition. The moment you begin to listen to that inner voice, everything starts to shift. You are not empty, you are not lacking, and you were never meant to chase completeness in the world outside. Everything you admire in others, every strength you wish you had, already exists within you in a quiet, unexpressed form. The problem is not absence, it is awareness. When you constantly doubt yourself, you disconnect from that inner source. But when you begin to trust yourself, even a little, you activate something powerful. Think about how often you've ignored your intuition, that subtle feeling that nudges you in a direction without explanation. That voice is not random, it is guidance. It speaks in calm certainty, not fear. But when fear gets louder, you start to believe that you're not ready, not capable, not enough. The truth is, fear is just noise. Your inner knowing is the signal. You don't need to become someone else to succeed. You need to return to who you truly are. Beneath the doubts, beneath the conditioning, beneath the expectations of others, there is a version of you that is confident, capable, and complete. That version is not in the future, it exists right now. The more you align with it, the more your reality begins to reflect it. Your thoughts are not just passing moments, they are seeds. What you repeatedly think, you begin to believe, and what you believe, you begin to live. If you constantly tell yourself that you can't, your actions will follow that story. But if you shift your inner dialogue, even slightly, you start rewriting your reality. It all begins within. You have more control than you realize, but it starts with responsibility. Not blame, not guilt, just awareness that your inner world shapes your outer world. When you take ownership of your thoughts and feelings, you stop being a victim of circumstances. Instead, you become the creator of your experience. That shift changes everything. There will be moments when doubt creeps in again, when old patterns try to pull you back. That's normal. Growth doesn't mean the absence of struggle. It means choosing differently despite it. Each time you choose to trust yourself instead of fear, you strengthen that inner power. Each small shift builds momentum. Stop waiting for the perfect moment, because that moment is created, not found. You don't need more time, more resources, or more validation to begin. You need belief. Even if it's small, even if it feels uncertain, it's enough to start. Action fueled by belief, no matter how small, is stronger than endless hesitation. Look at your life right now and ask yourself, what would change if you truly believed in yourself? How would you speak? How would you act? How would you decide? That version of you is not imaginary, it's a choice. And every day you are either stepping closer to it or further away from it. The world reflects who you believe you are. When you see yourself as limited, life feels limiting. When you see yourself as capable, opportunities begin to appear. It's not magic, it's alignment. Your inner state shapes your perception, and your perception shapes your reality. Change within, and the outside follows. You are not here to live a life defined by fear, doubt, or hesitation. You are here to express something unique, something powerful, something only you can bring into the world. But that expression begins the moment you stop underestimating yourself. The moment you decide that you are enough, exactly as you are. So listen closely to yourself, trust that quiet voice, and start moving with intention. You don't need permission to believe in yourself. You don't need evidence to begin. Everything you've been searching for has been within you all along, waiting for one decision to finally be acknowledged. There's a quiet truth that most people overlook while chasing success, happiness, and confidence in the outside world. And that truth is this: what you're searching for has never been outside of you. From a young age, you were conditioned to believe that everything valuable must be earned from external sources. approval from others, validation from achievements, recognition from society. Slowly, without even realizing it, you began to disconnect from your own inner power. You started believing that confidence comes from applause, that strength comes from circumstances, and that clarity comes from someone else giving you answers. But if you pause for a moment and really reflect, you'll notice something powerful. Every time you felt truly strong, it didn't come from outside, it came from within you. Think about a moment in your life when you overcame something difficult. Maybe no one was there to guide you. Maybe no one even noticed your struggle. Yet somehow you found a way through it. That strength didn't magically appear from the outside. It was already inside you, waiting to be activated. The problem is, most people don't trust that inner strength because they've been taught to doubt themselves. They second guess their decisions, ignore their instincts, and constantly compare themselves to others. And in doing so, they silence the very voice that is meant to guide them. But that voice never disappears. It just becomes quieter the more you ignore it. You don't become confident by collecting external proof. You become confident by recognizing what already exists within you. Confidence is not something you acquire, it is something you uncover. It's buried under layers of doubt, fear, and conditioning, but it's always there. The same goes for clarity. People often wait for the right moment or the perfect answer before they take action, not realizing that clarity is created through movement, not waiting. When you start trusting yourself, even in small decisions, you begin to strengthen that inner connection, and the more you trust it, the clearer everything becomes. There is also a deep sense of peace that comes from realizing you are not lacking anything. So much of anxiety and frustration comes from the belief that something is missing, that you need to become more, achieve more, or prove more to feel complete. But that belief is what keeps you stuck in a constant cycle of chasing. When you shift your perspective and understand that you are already whole, everything changes. You stop acting out of desperation and start acting with intention. You stop comparing your journey to others and begin to respect your own path. This doesn't mean you stop growing or improving yourself. It means your growth comes from a place of self-awareness, not self-doubt. It means you are no longer trying to fix yourself, but instead trying to express your true potential. There's a big difference between the two. One comes from a feeling of inadequacy, the other comes from a place of inner power. And when you operate from that place of inner power, your actions become more authentic, your decisions become more aligned, and your results become more meaningful. You have to understand that the world will always try to pull your attention outward. There will always be something or someone telling you who you should be, what you should do, and how you should live. But if you keep looking outside for direction, you will always feel uncertain. The only way to feel grounded is to build a strong connection with yourself. That means spending time understanding your thoughts, questioning your limiting beliefs, and learning to trust your own judgment. It's not always easy, because it requires you to face your fears and take responsibility for your life. But it's the only way to truly step into your power. The moment you start believing that everything you need is already within you, you stop waiting. You stop hesitating. You stop doubting every step you take. Instead, you begin to move with a sense of quiet confidence, not because you have all the answers, but because you trust yourself to figure things out along the way. And that trust is more powerful than any external validation you could ever receive. So the next time you feel lost or unsure, instead of immediately looking for answers outside, pause and turn inward. Ask yourself what you truly feel, what you truly want, and what you already know deep down. You might be surprised by the clarity that comes from within. Because the truth is, everything you've been searching for, strength, confidence, direction, it has been with you all along. You just have to choose to see it, trust it, and use it. Take a moment and observe your thoughts, not just the loud ones, but the quiet, repetitive ones that run in the background of your mind every single day. These are the thoughts that shape how you see yourself and how you experience the world. They may seem harmless or automatic, but over time they form beliefs. And those beliefs become the lens through which you interpret everything. If you constantly think, "I'm not good enough," Your mind will start looking for evidence to support that idea. You'll notice failures more than progress, rejection more than opportunity, and slowly that thought begins to feel like a fact. What's powerful and often overlooked is that your mind doesn't always distinguish between what is real and what is repeatedly imagined. If you keep feeding it the same negative narrative, it begins to accept it as truth. And once something feels true, your actions start aligning with it. You hesitate more, you doubt your decisions, you hold yourself back. Not because you lack ability, but because your inner story is limiting your outer behavior. On the other hand, when you begin to shift your thoughts, even slightly, you interrupt that pattern. You create space for a new belief to form, one that supports you instead of holding you back. This doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect or ignoring reality. It means becoming aware of how much influence your thinking actually has. For example, two people can face the same situation and walk away with completely different outcomes, not because the situation changed, but because their interpretations were different. One might see failure as proof they're not capable, while the other sees it as feedback for growth. That difference in thinking shapes their next step. One retreats, the other persists. Over time, those choices compound, creating completely different realities. Your thoughts also affect your emotions, and your emotions drive your actions. When you constantly think in a way that creates fear, doubt, or insecurity, your body responds accordingly. You feel tense, hesitant, uncertain, and in that state, you're less likely to take bold action or trust yourself. But when your thoughts create a sense of belief, possibility, and self-trust, your energy shifts. You feel more open, more willing, more capable. That emotional state influences how you show up, how you speak, and how you act, and that directly impacts your results. One of the biggest challenges is that many of your thoughts are not consciously chosen. They are patterns you've picked up over time, from past experiences, from people around you, from things you've been told or made to believe, and because they've been repeated so often, they feel natural. But natural doesn't always mean true. Just because you've thought something for years doesn't mean it's accurate. It simply means it has been practiced. And the same way it was practiced, it can be changed. The key is awareness. You can't change a thought pattern you're not aware of. Start paying attention to the way you talk to yourself, especially in moments of challenge or uncertainty. Do you immediately assume the worst? Do you criticize yourself harshly? Do you expect failure before you even try? These patterns might feel automatic, but they are not permanent. Once you notice them, you have the power to question them. Ask yourself, is this thought helping me or holding me back? If it's holding you back, you have the choice to shift it. Changing your thoughts doesn't mean everything will instantly become easy, but it does mean you'll approach life differently. Instead of seeing obstacles as signs to stop, you begin to see them as part of the process. Instead of defining yourself by your mistakes, you start learning from them. Instead of waiting for confidence to appear, you begin to build it through action. And as you continue to think in a way that supports growth, your actions start to reflect that mindset. Over time, this creates a powerful cycle. Positive, empowering thoughts lead to better actions, which lead to better results, which then reinforce those thoughts. It's not about perfection, it's about direction. Even a small shift in thinking can lead to a significant change in your life if it's consistent. Because your reality is not just shaped by what happens to you, but by how you think about what happens to you. So understand this clearly. Your thoughts are not just passing moments in your mind. They are the foundation of your experience. They influence your beliefs, your emotions, your decisions, and ultimately your outcomes. If you want to change your life, you don't start by changing everything around you. You start by changing the way you think. Because when your thinking changes, everything else begins to follow. There's a voice within you that doesn't shout, doesn't rush, and doesn't demand attention, yet it carries more truth than all the noise around you. It speaks in subtle feelings, quiet nudges, and a sense of knowing that doesn't always come with logical explanations. This is your intuition, your inner guidance system. and it has been with you long before you learned to doubt yourself. The challenge is not that this voice is absent, but that it often gets drowned out by fear, overthinking, and the opinions of others. When you begin to recognize it, you realize it has been guiding you all along. Think about those moments when you had a strong feeling about something, whether it was a decision, a person, or a situation, and later realized that feeling was right. That wasn't luck or coincidence. That was your intuition trying to guide you. But many times you ignored it because it didn't make immediate sense or because fear convinced you otherwise. Fear tends to be loud, urgent, and filled with what-ifs. Intuition, on the other hand, is calm, steady, and clear, even if it's quiet. Learning to distinguish between the two is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. Fear is rooted in protection. It tries to keep you safe by avoiding risk, uncertainty, or discomfort. While that can be useful in certain situations, it often holds you back from growth. Intuition isn't about keeping you comfortable. It's about guiding you toward what is right for you, even if it feels unfamiliar. That's why following your intuition can sometimes feel uncomfortable at first. It might push you to take a step you've been avoiding, to speak up when you'd rather stay silent, or to walk away from something that no longer aligns with you. But that discomfort is not a warning sign. It's often a signal of growth. One of the biggest reasons people struggle to trust their intuition is because they've been conditioned to rely solely on logic and external validation. They want proof, guarantees, and certainty before making a move. But intuition doesn't operate that way. It doesn't always give you a full roadmap. It gives you the next step, and that requires trust. Not blind trust, but a willingness to listen to yourself and act on that inner knowing, even when you can't fully explain it. The more you do this, the stronger that connection becomes. It's important to understand that intuition becomes clearer when your mind is quieter. When you are constantly overwhelmed, distracted, or overthinking, it becomes difficult to hear that inner voice. That's why moments of stillness are so important. Whether it's through reflection, silence, or simply taking a pause before making a decision, giving yourself space allows your intuition to surface. It's not something you need to force, it's something you allow. And when you start creating that space regularly, you'll notice that your decisions begin to feel more aligned and less conflicted. Trusting your intuition also means letting go of the need for constant approval from others. Not everyone will understand your choices, especially when they are guided by something they cannot see or feel. But your life is not meant to be lived according to someone else's certainty. When you rely too much on external opinions, you weaken your connection with yourself. On the other hand, when you start making decisions based on your inner guidance, you build self-trust. And that self-trust becomes a foundation for confidence. There will be times when you question yourself, when you wonder if what you're feeling is real or just fear in disguise. That's part of the process. The key is to stay aware. Pay attention to how the feeling shows up. Fear usually creates tension, urgency, and doubt. Intuition feels more like a quiet clarity, even if it's asking you to do something challenging. The more you observe this difference, the easier it becomes to recognize which voice is guiding you. Following your intuition doesn't mean everything will always go perfectly. It means you'll be making decisions that are true to you. And even when things don't turn out as expected, you'll learn, grow, and move forward with a deeper understanding of yourself. That's far more valuable than making safe choices that leave you feeling unfulfilled or disconnected. As you begin to trust your intuition, you'll notice a shift in how you move through life. Decisions that once felt overwhelming become clearer. You stop second-guessing every step. You start feeling more grounded, more aligned, and more confident in your direction. Not because you have all the answers, but because you trust yourself to navigate whatever comes next. So start paying attention to that quiet voice within you. It's not trying to confuse you, it's trying to guide you. The more you listen, the stronger it becomes. And the stronger it becomes, the more aligned your life begins to feel. Everything you need to make the right decisions is already within you. You just have to trust it. There's a trap that quietly holds so many people back, and it sounds reasonable on the surface. I'll start when I'm ready. It feels responsible, even smart, to wait for the right time, the right skills, the right confidence. But the truth is, that perfect moment you're waiting for rarely arrives. Conditions are never completely ideal, and if you keep waiting for everything to line up perfectly, you may find yourself stuck in the same place months or even years from now. The real shift happens when you realize that readiness is not something you wait for, it's something you create through action. You don't need to have everything figured out before you begin. In fact, most clarity comes after you start, not before. When you take that first step, even if it feels small or uncertain, you begin to learn, adapt, and grow. Each action gives you feedback, and that feedback shapes your next move. But when you stay stuck in overthinking, trying to plan every detail, you deny yourself that learning process. You stay in a loop of hesitation where nothing changes because nothing is being done. Another important thing to understand is that starting small is not a weakness, it's a strategy. You don't need to take massive, life-changing steps all at once. Sometimes the most powerful progress comes from consistent small actions taken every day. These actions may not feel impressive in the moment, but over time, they compound into significant change. What matters is not how big your first step is, but that you take it. You also have to let go of the idea that everything needs to be perfect before you begin. Perfection is often just another form of procrastination. It convinces you to keep adjusting, refining, and delaying instead of actually moving forward. But progress is messy. It involves mistakes, learning, and improvement along the way. When you accept that imperfection is part of the process, you free yourself to take action without the pressure of getting everything right. As you begin to act, even in small ways, you'll notice something shifting within you. That sense of hesitation starts to fade, replaced by a growing sense of capability. You begin to trust yourself more, not because everything is going smoothly, but because you're showing up despite the uncertainty. That consistency builds resilience, and that resilience becomes a foundation for long-term growth. There will still be moments when you feel unsure, when you question whether you're on the right path. That's natural, but instead of stopping, you learn to adjust. Action gives you the ability to refine your direction, while inaction keeps you stuck in doubt. Even if you take a step in the wrong direction, you gain clarity about what doesn't work, and that's valuable. It brings you closer to what does. The most important thing is to understand that your future is shaped by what you do now, not by what you plan to do later. Every day you wait for the perfect moment is a day you could have been learning, growing, and moving forward. And once you realize that you don't need to have it all figured out to begin, you take back your power. You stop waiting for permission and you start creating your own path. So instead of asking yourself, am I ready? Ask yourself, am I willing to start? Because willingness is enough. A small step taken today is more powerful than a perfect plan delayed indefinitely. Everything you want to build, achieve, or become begins with that first move. And the moment you take it, you prove to yourself that you don't need perfect conditions, you just need to begin. There comes a moment in life when you realize that constantly blaming circumstances, people, or situations is not moving you forward, it's keeping you stuck. It may feel justified at times because challenges are real and not everything is in your control. But there is a deeper truth that changes everything. While you may not control everything that happens to you, you always have control over how you respond to it. And that response is where your true power lies. The moment you begin to take responsibility for your inner world, your thoughts, your reactions, your mindset, you stop giving your power away and start reclaiming it. Taking responsibility is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything that has gone wrong, nor does it mean ignoring the impact of external factors. It simply means recognizing that your inner state, is something you can influence. When you stay unaware of your thoughts and emotions, they begin to control you. You react automatically, repeating the same patterns without questioning them. But when you become aware, you create space between what happens and how you respond. In that space, you have a choice, and that choice is what determines your direction. Many people live in a constant cycle of reaction. Something happens, and immediately they feel frustrated, discouraged, or defeated. Then they act based on those emotions, often reinforcing the very situation they want to escape. Over time, this creates a sense of helplessness, as if life is just happening to them. But the truth is, the way you interpret and respond to situations plays a major role in shaping your experience. Two people can face the same challenge and walk away with completely different outcomes, simply because one chooses to respond with awareness while the other reacts unconsciously. When you take responsibility for your inner world, you begin to observe your thoughts instead of immediately believing them. You start to question whether your reactions are helping you or holding you back. For example, if something doesn't go your way, your first thought might be, "This always happens to me," or "I'm not capable." But instead of accepting that as truth, you pause and ask, "Is this thought useful? Is it helping me move forward?" That small moment of awareness allows you to shift your perspective. Instead of falling into negativity, you can choose a more constructive way of thinking. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It requires practice and patience because your mind is used to certain patterns. But every time you choose to respond differently, you weaken the old pattern and strengthen a new one. Over time, this creates a powerful transformation. You begin to feel more in control, not because life has become easier, but because you are no longer at the mercy of every thought or emotion that arises. Another important aspect of taking responsibility is understanding that your emotions are signals, not commands. Feeling fear, frustration, or doubt is part of being human, but those feelings don't have to dictate your actions. When you learn to acknowledge your emotions without being controlled by them, you gain a new level of freedom. You can feel fear and still take action. You can feel doubt and still move forward. That is real strength, not the absence of negative emotions, but the ability to act despite them. As you continue to take ownership of your inner world, you also begin to notice how much your mindset influences your reality. When you consistently choose thoughts that empower you, your behavior changes. You become more proactive, more resilient, and more open to opportunities. And those changes in behavior lead to different outcomes. It's not about forcing positivity or ignoring challenges. It's about choosing a mindset that allows you to navigate those challenges effectively. This level of responsibility also brings a sense of freedom. When you stop depending on external factors to feel good or to move forward, you become less affected by things you can't control. You no longer need everything to go perfectly in order to feel confident or motivated. Instead, you create that stability within yourself, and that inner stability allows you to stay grounded even in uncertain situations. There will be moments when it feels easier to fall back into old habits, to blame, to react, or to give up control. That's part of the process. But each time you catch yourself and choose differently, you reinforce your ability to take ownership. It's not about being perfect, it's about being aware and intentional. Every small shift matters because it moves you closer to becoming the person who leads their life instead of being led by it. When you truly understand and apply this, everything begins to change. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as someone who has influence over their path. You become more focused, more deliberate, and more aligned with your goals. And most importantly, you build a deep sense of trust in yourself, knowing that no matter what happens, you have the ability to respond in a way that supports your growth. That is where your real power lies, not in controlling the outside world, but in mastering your inner world. And once you do that, you realize that you are not just experiencing life, you are shaping it, one thought, one choice, and one response at a time.